Good morning, everyone. So it's now 10:15. Let's get started with our second lecture. I hope you have had a good start of the week. And I will go slow. I see that some participants are still coming in. And we have not that many at the moment, 13. So a heads up before entering the lecture. If you have some question in advance that you would like to ask, please do it so. And you know that this lecture is being recorded and I will make it available as you will see further on. But if I also see that participants are not coming and then I have to make a comparison between those that are coming in and the registration list for the seminar, for example, then I will only share the recording upon your request via email with a certain justification. So some of you write to me occasionally that you cannot come to this or that lecture, which I of course accept and share the link. The link to the lectures, to the records is available, as well as the slides in OLAT. But we also have to make here a balance between what I can offer to you within my views of teaching and education, open access, that I'm a strong advocate of. But then we also have to make the balance to have a good number of participants here. I think it's my role to facilitate also your life, but it's also important to have this common understanding. And there's some heads up here that I always like to do, before bringing the heavy tools to this second lecture. And I hope in the end the lecture also makes sense to you. But first, a little recap of the previous lecture, our introduction lecture, and some adjustments I have to do here to don't create a mess. So basically, this table summarizes most of the things we have been discussing in the last Thursday. We talk about the core of this module, Evolutionary Economic Geography, the first row here you see, in which the key questions are to understanding this organization of the economic landscape, very much discussed throughout in this evolutionary perspective. So elements of time, of past experiences, and how they influence the present in terms of innovation, in terms of policies, in terms of entrepreneurship, have or are the result of some policies in the past, some decisions by private entities, firms, economic agents, the economic players that we have discussed. And we also talk about relational economic geography and institutional economic geography. And I also told you that the differences are sometimes difficult to grasp, and the main difference, they don't come on the definition itself, and we are not here discussing about definitions of each of these paradigms within economic geography, but also the concepts that make up all of these three paradigms, and how eventually that articulation lead to new approaches within economic geography. And we'll see partly today and in the further lectures all these concepts that make up of the evolutionary economic geography. And we'll continue discussing that everything depends very much on these interactions and interrelations between different economic agents, between social actors as well. They all influence economic activities in one way or another, through profit, through non-profit activities, and through policies. Policies, for example, regarding regional developments or innovation policies. And we also discuss the role of the institutions, these macro level institutions at the or national or federal or supranational level, such as European Union, the World Bank, that they influence also the organization of the economic landscape. We didn't discuss much about methods, and we did not discuss much about the details of place and space and how this distinction is made in terms of in theoretical terms. So this because we will take these real spaces that are around us or clusters, I mean regional districts, for example, urban areas, regions and countries as the real spaces here within the evolutionary economic geography. Okay, a recap of the first lecture, lots of literature explaining this in very detail in the OLAT, in the e-learning platform, such as this one I pointed out here, which explains very clearly and with simple words these differences. And then we advance here towards our second lecture, a lecture that I decided to bring. It goes more in line with the way I also position myself into discussion, with some preoccupations towards sustainability within the three pillars of sustainability: social, economic, and ecological. So I decided to, as a sort of introduction as well, to more or what economic geography, the role economic geography can play in addressing prime issues in contemporary territories, in contemporary urban regions and countries as well. So we'll be discussing about the interlinkage between evolution economic geography and these societal challenges that impact today's life. This will also pave the way for forthcoming lectures. Some practicalities here. The office hours are online every Wednesday, and I request you to send me an email in advance if you would like to discuss with me. You can also bring your questions via email, and I will certainly provide you the best answer I can. So contrary to some of my colleagues, I prefer interactions via email than so I can answer anytime throughout 24 hours of the day, throughout all the week, so I can easily answer and sometimes prepare the answer much better if we have a one-to-one discussion. But I'm of course also open to do that. And again, a second part of practicalities, and one of them, the Google Scholar search. I can spend some time later on doing that. So the past lectures are available in video in my Google Drive, because I couldn't upload them onto the OLAT platform, as they are too large. They are too large. So they are. If you go on OLAT platform, you will see the link, and you can download them and then watch them later. And what I ask you is not to circulate these lectures beyond the domain of our university. So these are lectures prepared for you as a students within these modules. So I ask you at this stage not to share the link with third parties that are not involved in our lecture. And the direct link is here, yeah, and directed to the Google Drive, only to this specific folder. The first lecture is already there. The slides of the second lecture, they are already in the OLAT platform, and the most of the literature as well, which I will also underline, the best one. And some also heads up here in the Google Scholar, and I'm sure you are also to some extent familiar with this Google Scholar. And there is some tricky elements here when you are searching for literature, and you can already do that to understand if the topic you are thinking about, and I hope you are already thinking about in the topic for your essay, for instance. There are some ways of trying to narrow down your topic, that this will help you to narrow down your topic and understand if if literature exists that can support your essay. For example, I take here one of the essays of my previous module here at the university by within economic geography, more focus on the degrowth debate. So this is the title of the essay, and then just as an example of this possible search, you can use here the search with the exact match by using specifically these search queries, that as we call. And you see that the first one, if you bring evolutionary economic geography and exactly like this economic geography, you will get 4 results. So you have to open it up a little bit. So we drop economic from the degrowth, and we'll have 49 results. a reasonable number for you to go through and see which of these publications are available to you, and if they are useful for your first steps in drawing these connections I talked to you about in the first lecture. And if you think that these 49 are still not enough to help you polish your idea, or if it's still very much within economic domain, and if you want to go through an understanding more close to social perspectives, to labor dynamics as well, or to industrial perspectives, then you have to now also play here with the words, and you will have you can go through economic geography and degrow. And if you are specifically looking for examples, for instance, in Germany, and you will need to use evolutionary economic geography and degrow, for instance, and a specific case in Germany, and the Google will retrieve and will give back to you certain results in which these keywords of your search string are retrieved. I can quickly jump out and see, let's see, for example, this copy and paste, specifically this one on the Google Scholar. I'm aware that maybe you already know tones about this, and I'm here just touching again things that you already know. So you see here, you retrieve about 673 results. And if you want to, then you exclude here the citations, the number goes down a little bit. If you want to just to restrict this to a specific time, so you tell, you cannot see my screen this now. That's why I thought that will be possible. So just a moment, let's do this. I go to minimize here, and I still see, so I have to stop my screen sharing, and I'm going now to the Google. Sorry for that. Thank you for the heads up, Neil. That's right. As I have to open here my window. Okay, you can see now, I guess. My so what I'm doing, I opened the Google Scholar. Okay, just like that, and let's close this on here, and I paste this search string, economic geography and degrow, the one that gives us in my first trying the large number of results, 673 here. We exclude citations, that these words appear in the citations of these articles. We got a little bit less, yet a good representation here. These is covering any time, so you may have publications from I don't know, the beginning of 1920 or even earlier than that. So if you want to restrict your search, you, for example, introduce year 2000, and then you justify based on previous studies that the year 2000 is somehow a starting point on discussions of degrowth. So I'm here hypothesizing at the moment. I don't really have concrete data, and you want to go until 2020. So you do a more restrictive search, and actually it turns to give you 599 results. And then of course you have to be here, you have to try to understand, and still 600 are too many results, and you have to see which ones are really interesting to you. You may need to open one or another and see if this really, by reading the abstract will be available. So this is a good journal within economic geography, primarily focus on dynamics within regions, and you read the abstract and you start understanding if this is useful for your argumentation or not. In this case, they talk about innovation within green growth, so perhaps you can hypothesize here they bring a little of environmental sustainability principles into play. Okay, and do you have questions in this context, or you'll need to spend a bit more time on this, or that's all right at the moment? Then you, of course, then just please feel free to drop or to intervene by using the chat, your microphone as well. Okay, that's that. You save the document in your database. If you cannot download and you think that this is really useful for you, so let me know, and then I will try to reach out to reach the respective paper. And I'm having some difficulty here with the Windows. Okay, then let's move on the context, and I will go back to the presentation, and with screen sharing. Seems that I am slightly slow on my way of acting here, and sometimes happens. Not all days are perfect, happens to everybody. Okay, so this was some heads up before going through the lecture, and we'll be talking about elements that maybe you already discussed from different perspectives in other courses, in other disciplines, and we'll try to bridge here. Although this is to some extent a novelty within research on economic geography, or more specific on evolutionary economic geography, linking it with these grand societal challenges, in which then we have to discuss about sustainable development, the sustainable development goals, and how, to what extent we can think about sustainable development through an evolutionary perspective. And I bring this already in advance, that of course this implies talking about economics, talking about the organization of the economic landscape, and then all the dynamics that exist in this context, from global supply chains to localized industrial development as well. And this all part of a collective endeavor. And why I'm discussing this. There is plenty of literature at the moment justifying the importance or the need for economic geography, specifically to engage with social issues, not specifically within the sustainable development goals or how to operationalize it, but how economic geography should play a role in addressing these social challenges in a more broader perspective. And they all call for this collective endeavor. So we, as a citizens, as a researchers, myself and yourself, that you are students yet researchers within your domain, we all play a role in this context. However, we have also to step back a little bit, and not to present the issues in a so much ambitious manner, because we have to also be realistic on the patterns we can embrace and we can contribute to change. So, but first, let's go with the evolutionary economic geography before I engage with other discussions. And here, two leaders in terms of evolutionary economic geography within evolutionary thinking within economic geography, Paul Krugman and Michael Porter. Many of the discussions you will see in the literature, they have a starting point from these two economists, and in case of Paul Krugman and Michael Porter, more on the business aspects and management of business. They both discovered geography, and they starting discussing elements that are very, very much entangled with the space, with the real places around us, the regions, the countries, and the cities. So they start discussing these dynamics and competitiveness of the economic sectors within the space. And to the point that Krugman was the first to come with this new economic geography concept. And what emerges from both is this appreciation, this valuing the importance of history in the economic landscape, or how that landscape evolves over time. So the discourse on evolutionary economic geography as we know it today, as Bosman and Martin here in this reference I put to you discussed quite intensively. So the discourse was not evolutionary economic geography as this term, but the principles that then make what evolutionary economic geography is these days. They were already embedded in these approaches by Krugman and Porter. And one of the most well-known works of Michael Porter is The Competitive Advantage of Nations, in which Porter discuss the elements, the key strategic domains that make a country or a region stand out in the global competitive arena, by valuing, for example, their local assets or raw materials, the availability of raw materials, or their capability of transforming these raw materials into final products. And both underline the historical processes and how the economic landscape evolved through time. So again, this is the core of the discipline of evolutionary economic geography, these two precursors. So unlike the neoclassic theory, then this within evolutionary economic the economic thinking that brings together this history and the geography. They are both taken very serious in the construction of the economic landscape. In what the distinctive element here as to look specifically to what is more valuable within these territories. So it looks to these place-specific elements and process, and this is also something I'm very attached to, is to the importance of valuing the local. We are within a cultural and economic globalization and process that's still very much ongoing and influencing all the countries around the world, despite even with some more conservative regimes in terms of political sense. So, but in this context, although within the globalization patterns that we all are aware of, it's important to value these place-specific elements of each real place, or to bring this to the vocabulary of evolutionary economic geography. It's important to value these place-specific elements. So this is a combination of evolutionary economics with this geographic thinking and the value of the place-specific elements, and this is possible through different concepts within economic geography. Then they start being polished by different researchers into a more evolutionary language, more evolutionary thinking discourse within economic geography, that I recall here, and on a recap as well, that economic geography is very concerned with the patterns of regional development, with understanding the inequalities within economic dynamics, why certain places evolve in one way and others are incapable of progressing towards a higher level or more advanced level of development. So this is from the core literature that is probably in your first lecture, Bosman and Martin, 2007. They put it: evolutionary economic geography is concerned with some of these. These are the key questions within economic geography. Is bringing the spatial dimension to the economic, to understanding of the behavior, to the economic behavior of societies, and this implies understanding innovation processes, in understanding policies, processes supporting innovation within specific or sectors or regions, understanding the emergence of new firms, or why consolidated firms at some extent go bankrupt, for example. This is more in a micro level. Or understanding the overall behavior of certain industries, such as the textile industry, the automobile industry, or the components for automobile, for example, understanding their dynamics, their successes, and also their failures, and putting this also in this global perspective, and understanding the influence of networks in this process. If certain decisions taken elsewhere in the far away place from this core of these certain industries, if they influence the behavior of these firms embedded in this industrial sector. And this means that also to talk about the spatial structures of the economy, trying to understand the pillars of certain economies, what makes one economy be specialized in one sector, what's the core elements of this pillar. Is more about the governance overall, is about the strong role of the government, or is also about a strong cooperation across this territorial governance, across this governance of the territory. We discuss about, I mean, interaction between public entities and private actors, all these economic players we often discuss in this context. And now this economic landscape also works in a more self-organization manner, and this is also very much linked with it. One of the challenges in today's society, this more individualistic way of behavior. But economic geography also tries to understand what extent these new industries, these new firms, they behave the way they behave, if this is influenced by, again, these interrelationships across scales, or if they have strong factors that can be interlinked with this self-organization, this capacity of themselves to to embrace failures, for example, overcoming these failures towards a more advanced level of development. And this implies discussing what we will discuss a little bit today and further on: path creation, path dependencies, and understanding all these factors that shape these geographies of economic development and transformation or economic change in this context. So again, we reach this somehow a synthesis diagram on the theories that impact that have been impacting evolutionary economic geography through time. And while I discussed it to you in the first lecture, this is very much about what economic geography is in terms of discipline and the paradigm of evolutionary economic geography. They are the result of exchanges of knowledge exchange across disciplines. And some researchers within economic geography discuss this in the terms of pluralism. What other theoretical insights from other paradigms in economic geography influence the way evolutionary economic geography thinks about the organization of the economic landscape, how the concepts that are embedded within evolutionary economic geography, where they are coming from, which paradigms have or paradigms or concepts or theoretical approaches have impacted the evolutionary economic geography. And we see here the strong convergence between, again, institutional economics, neoclassic economic geography, relational economy. Somehow this summarizes also part of what we discussed in the previous lectures. So instead of putting this in a multidisciplinary perspective, we bring this to the discipline of economic geography, and we discuss this in the terms of engaged pluralism. Means, again, building from other paradigms within economic geography, very well explained in these references here. So, and you may wonder, so what this means in terms of practical terms. We are discussing this is engagement with different paradigms within economic geography. In practical terms, means that evolution economic geography takes pieces from these ways of thinking, the organization of the economic landscape, to put this into a more evolutionary perspective. And again, this means talking about understanding the processes of the economic landscape. I mean, production, circulation, distribution, and consumption, and understanding these dynamics or a transformative change they have been through since a certain time. So, and then he is not talking necessarily about, and when I refer to time, trying to be more specific, then if you make an analysis and trying to understand the evolution of a certain region in northern Germany, for example, then you go back to the 2000, you don't take that as a static milestone, the starting of the analysis 2000 is, then you have to try to justify why you are choosing this starting point for your analysis. For example, maybe there was a political change in this context, or if you even go back, you for example create a milestone on the 2 years after the Second World War, so you have a solid starting point to understand the dynamics, the dynamics of the economic landscape through time. There was a political change. There is a need to borrow money from foreign entities to support economic development. So there was a process of engagement with actors that led to the transformation of the economic landscape. And then in this context, if you then bring that discussion to today, then you have to understand what was happened in the past. So we talk about this path dependent. If the economies, they were very much attached to all these elements that made up what their past. So there is also an attachment to elements that are very much embedded in this territory, understanding the elements in the historical sense that contribute to shape the economic landscape. And this, also, we will discuss this more at length later on. This path-dependent process or the system is more about defining here the roadmaps to let us or help us to understand better how this economic landscape work, and to to understand what's happened, the reality of today's is influenced by which elements of the past, if institutions, if the role of one actor, and then we engage here with discussions in terms of leadership. In some examples that you will see in the literature, sometimes the reality of today's within a specific economic landscape in the 21st century is very much the result of a strong leadership in the past by sometimes only one actor or only one institution. So that's in practical terms what the meaning of this context. And those in a more theoretical exploration of the evolutionary economic geography in a less practical manner that try to understand these historical processes of developments and the impact on the economic landscape, or not the impact on the transformation of the economic landscape, they merge their thinking on the evolutionary biology from Darwin, this path dependency theory, complexity theory, and also the political economy. So all of this contributed to polish the evolutionary economic geography, and they are the base of most of the literature you have in your e-learning platform and the literature you will come across if you do this Google search. So in terms of vocabulary or concepts, to be more concrete in the practical sense, what makes up evolutionary economic geography is this location opportunity, deciding in which place to locate a certain firm, or to build an industrial cluster, for example. It's talking about in evolutionary economic geography, we discuss about technological districts or industrial districts. There is a lot of discussions also within regional innovation systems, knowledge exchange, knowledge intensive entrepreneurship, also understanding to that extent one region very with a strong embeddedness of traditional industry transform itself towards a more, for example, a knowledge-based economy. So understanding these dynamics, what elements influence this transformation from a heavy industry, for example, towards a more service-oriented activities. And then this will open areas for research. And then please be aware of the following, that some of these concepts you see here, they are also part of our own exercise as researchers. My role as a researcher, and your role as a researcher. And you may think about a certain subject, and at some point you find all this theoretical linkage, you try to justify your rationale, the selection of your topic, and then you start building also a vocabulary around it. Of course, this takes a lot of time, but some of these elements you see here in this slide, they didn't come up out of the blue. They are the result of a sound theoretical work, and in many occasions in economic geography being very much empirical based, also the result of empirical work. And then we have, if we understanding this transformation process from a heavy industry to a knowledge-based economy, then we'll open up here areas of research focus on old industrial areas or towns, why they remain locked in these traditional sectors, for example. And then we discuss cluster dynamics, and then economic geography follows also this what I mentioned to you before, this political economy, and discuss and the discussions coming from sometimes multinational entities such as the European Union. So some of the discussions in practical terms also touch upon concepts coming from these entities, such as the smart specialization, very a core concept within the European Union regional development policy. But well, there is this a dual relationship. The European Union or the European Commission, when they are preparing these overarching documents, these overarching strategic documents, they often call researchers within economic geography, if is to deal with regional developments, to also comment about their policy. So there is an exchange of knowledge here, supporting the definition of policies, and then researchers take these policies and try to build empirical cases around it, and then again polish it towards a more theoretical conceptualization. And then we enter here this virtual cycle of research. So central question within economic geography, a recap. So what is try to understand why it is that some regional economies become locked into development paths that lose dynamism, so they are not able to continue this advanced level of development, while other regional economies seem able to avoid this trap of failure. So trying to understand why we have some advanced regions. If you think about Europe, or if you think about the global north, why we have some highly advanced urban regions in Europe or in North America, and we still have a lot of poverty traps in the global south. Or if you also bring this in another in a more localized context, and if you look at this in a more local perspective, you also can make an analysis why we have very advanced core urban areas and the surrounding areas are or filled with slums, or they have heavy industry that sometimes they are not respecting all these environmental standards, but they play a key role in the contributing to the GDP, for instance. So there are also, you can put this in the global context, this analysis of these dynamics and understanding the regional inequalities and even developments within a global scale or within the localized scale. And I think we make, before going to this example, again, very much focus on the European Union, we do here a 5 minutes break to come with a more fresh mind to these examples I have here for you. All right, so see you in 5 minutes, and I'm counting it to be more sharp. Initiate the record here. All right, so thank you for staying, and let's carry on with a couple of examples before entering the grand societal challenges. So if you ask in the practical terms where I can apply this knowledge, this evolutionary thinking within economic geography to understand the economic landscape, we talk about time, historical process of development. This is one case in which economic geographers are trying to understand these dynamics across the European Union, understanding why certain regions, let's say the focus here in Western Europe, I'm trying to point out, very well known to you, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, the Nordic countries, why they are considered as advanced regions, and while others, although embedded within the same policies, within the same multi-sector and financial frameworks from the European Union, they are still so-called lagging behind. So there are two types. We have the low-growth regions, the low-income regions. The definitions are not really relevant for the lecture here, but they however, they still play an important role within their specific territorial contexts, and about 83 million inhabitants are living in this southern circle here. So some of the exercises within economic geography try to understand these dynamics, try to understand why regions of Portugal are still lagging behind in terms of contribution to the GDP, and why some others are still considering the low income regions. So one territorial domain in which economic geography can play a role to understand these dynamics and eventually not only contribute to new conceptualizations of within evolutionary economic geography, but also to come up with some policy recommendations or designing frameworks that can lead to other researches, and hopefully in a practical sense that can contribute to the quality of life and well-being of the societies living in these regions. So the exercise we do within evolutionary economic geography goes across scales from the global to the more micro level. Micro level here we talk about the firm level. So a specific economic a specific business that takes place is embedded in a territory and is linked or not to other firms within the same sector or across sectors. So the analysis in terms of research goes to the micro level, and policy as well to the meso level. And here we are talking about a sector, for example, industrial sector, the raw material mining activities, for example. So when we think about a specific sector, or also in these days, the digital sector, the technology, the more related, those activities, those sectors more related to the knowledge-based economy, and also in this meso level between the micro and the macro, both in terms of territorial levels here, or real places, as the discourse within economic geography touched upon. Also understanding these relationships across territories and across sectors, and one influences the other. So, and then we try to understand this also in a macro level perspective. So within economic geography, we'll see, and when you look for literature, that there are examples that focus mainly at the macro level, the competitiveness between regions. There are some specific concepts in this regarding. We'll discuss that in one of the lectures, constructing regional advantage, related and unrelated variety. But then when you also look to the micro level, to understanding the dynamics within firms, within business, embedded, for example, in the industrial district, then you also have to understand what's going on in terms of the macro level, or what role play some networks that exist. So there is always the need to explore these different levels when you are doing a research in economic geography, because the way a firm exists or behaves can be the result of the CEO or of the entrepreneur, but in many times this is also very much attached to the overall governance of of the sector or of the region. And this entails also understanding the role of policies in this context. Maybe there are policies more open to support innovation within a specific sector. Maybe there are some measures that incentivize or attract certain business that can boost the overall performance of these firms, or the overall performance of these sectors of activity. And there is also, again, this is the dear concept of evolutionary economic geography, again, the path dependency, understanding that, for instance, at the micro level, that choices made in the past, for example, in terms of technologies, in terms of choices of product design, the assets that these firms could explore, the patents they register, or their specific competencies, that they influence the subsequent choices. So there is an evolution process, decisions taken that led to a certain behavior still influencing, or the way they keep doing their design of their products, the way they place the products in the market, the way they engage with the market, in which directions they want their products to be accepted by the consumer. These from the consumer side, from the consumption side, and also aspects from the production. So everything we see, certainly within from this path dependency perspective, is the result of choices made in the past. In a more micro level, how you put this, you don't look much at the decisions within the firm, decisions from an entrepreneur in choosing a certain type of technology, or choosing a certain type of energy supply, for example, but you put this in a more macro level. So you are talking about policies here, specialization policies, entrepreneurial or employment patterns as well. And this also relates with policies supporting research and development, or supporting entrepreneurship. So we have to bring this to a larger level, understanding the role of these institutions, the role of policies, the role of measures within this organization of the economic landscape. And sometimes this is, and most of the times this is formal, but in other cases can also be some sort of informal arrangements that start as informal, and they become successful in supporting dynamics within a sector, and then they formalize these informal arrangements into policies. So, and you have the example, for example, this very popular concept within energy transition, and other heads up here, that many of the discussions you see in today's literature, in academic research, maybe in other disciplines of you, in your modules, is also trying to catching up with current discourses sometimes, and I want to believe that most of the times we do that to fulfill theoretical gaps in the literature, or also support an advancement in the social terms, contributed to address some social issues, as we will see later. But in others is also following very much follow some trends. And energy, discussing sustainability transitions, or more specifically energy transition, is a very popular topic, is a very hot topic these days within economic geography and also across other disciplines. And from economic geography, certainly different yet complementary to others, the role is to understand that some previous decisions can influence, can support or hinder, blocking future alternatives. So this is very much an exercise taking place in Germany, in the Netherlands. These are the countries leading currently research within energy transition. From economic perspectives, they're trying to understand the role of past decisions in processes in adopting more environmental friendly alternative ways of producing energy, and also try to understand in which context this works better and why. Maybe there are certain elements along the way or within the territory that make this transition more easier to somehow. Maybe there are policies in specific states or in specific regions that help this context in comparison to others. So we are always talking about here very much qualitative case studies and comparative case studies, and understanding why in others the use of fossil fuels, for example, persist and still commonly used to within our industrial activities or for urban heating, for example. Here just one of the examples. And Neil, do you want to intervene?
Yes, I have a question, because energy transition was part of my my work in the first semester of cultural geography, and I was very interested in popular discourse and how it affects energy transitions, like if the discourse is accepting in the regions. And I would be interested if such research is happening in evolution economic geography, because I think it's all the time it's also important to look at how the region's acceptance of certain technologies function. And I was interested if this would be possible with this framework.
Well, thank you so much. It is certainly a very important element, and there is these elements of the attachment, and I am certainly I can look into it and provide a more specific answer in terms of examples or in terms of one or two papers that specifically focus on this attachment of this acceptance of discourses and how this influences the transition towards more sustainable or more environmental friendly energy. There are certainly maybe not many, but some publications in this regarding. And if I take this to, for example, landscape conservation, there is some popular definitions that the pro-environmental conservation behaviors are activated when a community is more engaged, and then this leads you to talk about place attachment, okay, sense of place. This is very much within cultural geography, but also touched upon within economic geography when we talk about competitiveness across regions and the exercise of branding. I'm already bringing here a lot of examples, but this is somehow interlinked. So within or land use science or landscape conservation studies, there is this branch of research that explores how the attachment influences pro-environmental conservation behaviors of the communities. So if they are attached, they tend to support the conservation. If they believe that this transition to a more environmental friendly energy will lead to economic benefits, will improve their quality of life, will improve the quality of the surrounding areas, will lead eventually to the development of green infrastructures, they tend to support this transition. Indeed, policies are important, the role of governments and the role of private actors, because in the end, they also have to profit. But it's fundamental to do this through a participatory manner. And this means engaging with our co-production, our co-creation, and the success of these energy transition policies certainly depends of the support they will receive within communities. I think this is an excellent topic of research, and mainly through a comparative case, why in certain, for example, let's put this in a more micro level, in territorial micro level, in terms of how a town is successfully moving to a more alternative ways of producing energy in comparison to others. Maybe the policies play a role, but maybe these policies, they are supported through a strong participation of the local communities, so the discourse gains track within a society. And there are different ways of doing this, even using social media to somehow spread the word within the community in terms of benefits of this transition. And let me jump out of this slide, because within your literature, there are not publications answering to this Niels question, but others that are very relevant. And now I have to again go here and share the screen, but share my PDFs. Okay, one is coming. Just a moment. Okay, there I just pointed out here for publications within this topic that we are discussing, evolutionary economic geography and grand societal challenges, the role of policies, not specific within energy transition. There are other publications, I can also drop them there. So these are core publications that tell you why economic geography engage with societal challenges, for example. And this one brings examples more focused on innovation policies in the, if I'm right, in Finland, the Netherlands, and Sweden. They try to understand how the success of past policies in the Netherlands and Sweden influence this transition towards a more sustainability, more sustainable way of planning and managing the society in a broader way, in the social and economic dynamics. And here another one from a core researcher within economic geography, will come across of this name very often in your search, discuss the importance of economic geography to position the discipline as a discipline contributing to address of social relevance. Okay, a discipline that it needs to play a core role in addressing these social issues. That's why I bring the discussion today, and the time is really going quick, and I still have a number of slides to go through. And another one that in this context I'm already advancing something here, so this there are different avenues of research. While others explore place attachment and the role they play in solidifying energy transition discourse, as just Niels pointed out. There are others, they discuss how this more in a more broad sense, and they come with these mission-oriented innovation policies as a way to address these social challenges. So instead of having the mission of profit of for-profit entities, enterprises, is to make profit, but within that aim of making profit, they can also reorient their activities to specific targets. And in this context, if they want to fulfill, for example, the sustainable development goals, these mission-oriented policies means that they are narrowing down their activities in specific ways, in a way that, for example, make them more energy efficient. And there are cases in France, in UK, in Germany. Okay, then you go through, you will see, in this case, you copy this link to Google Scholar, and you try to retrieve the publication if you want to see examples in Germany. Okay, this is a core publication in this context by Mariano Mazzucato, well-known researcher and also a consultant, very much engaged with the definition of policies at the European level that impact all of us in Europe. And this is a beautiful exercise here, how she puts this, how the mission-oriented innovation policies can contribute to the grand challenges that I want to discuss with you later. And she comes with a number of recommendations, and she brings the example of how to, for example, clean the oceans, this grand challenge that the pollution and the degradation of the land and seascapes. What the mission should be? Should be reaching a plastic-free ocean. How to do that? Very beautiful to put it, very difficult to reach. We all have to be aware and not putting these things in a very much ambitious way. I'm in support of being ambitious is very important in our towards ourselves, in our career goals, but also be very realistic in the way we put the elements. So she provides here a number of projects that could, support achieving these goals. But let's go back to the slides and to see if we can reach the level. And again, where is my Zoom window? Share slides here. Okay, and here we go again. And in the same way that you have research exploring these alternative energies, there are other research that try to justify why some countries they still very much engage with the fossil fuels. Maybe that is the lobby of the automobile sector. Maybe that is the role of these networks. You remember I talked to you just before at this meso level, the trying to make sense of what I said in the beginning. Maybe the association of producers of oil impacts these impacts or leads to these lock-in processes. Why certain or in sectors, industries, or certain territories are still very much dependent on these fossil fuels. And then sometimes the role of these oil lobbies or networks, organizations, is to cement, to solidify the position of these producers. And then we have here trying to address the grand societal challenges such as climate change, land degradation of the oceans is at stake. Okay, is very difficult to overcome these issues. Just that, here there's no text, and sometimes there are some specific concepts in which you can work very well with image and less than words. Others is not possible. If you discuss about over tourism in economic geography, an exercise you can do is to identify spots of over tourism. Let's put this in the non-COVID context. So you have these pockets of over tourism across Europe and in Southeast Asia, Latin America as well. So we can, in economic geography, we can identify this. In evolutionary economic geography, we'll try to understand how they came to be overcrowded. What elements are actually behind this over tourism? Is only these place-based assets, only the heritage, is only the gastronomy, the seaside, the beautiful landscapes? Trying to understand the elements. Maybe there are a number of policies that led to this over tourism. Maybe there are the influence of technological development, social media that led to this over tourism. And also within evolutionary economic geography, the exercise you will do is to, okay, there's this over tourism in these specific territories, and how through evolutionary thinking we can overcome the negative impacts of this over tourism. Of course, certainly providing alternative ways of traveling, maybe slow travel is also a concept that I explored in my other module within sustainable economic geography and sustainability. And there is different domains to explore over tourism. If you explore it from a planning perspective, you may discuss housing affordability and how these online platforms such as Airbnb impact the housing affordability in historical city centers in Europe. Many cases in Amsterdam, in Lisbon, that is, and also publications in this regarding. So I'm trying here to somehow support you. That's also my role, not coming with strong definitions. It's also to influence your way of thinking in terms certain subjects. So if you look at one specific issue, energy transition over tourism, you try to identify it exists in certain geographies, why it exists, and how to overcome it. Try to identify all these driving forces behind and what in what way this can be supported. And in this context, that evolutionary economic geography engages with other type of discourses again, with resilience, with transition, sustainability transition, energy transition, more environmental friendly, and all of this takes place within the governance discussions. How this governance, both again public and private entities, how the role they play in understanding this, or the concentration of industries, or how these networks evolving through time. So I try to provide here a summary of this of today's lecture before going to the element that hopefully will also attract your attention, that we are at the crossroads in terms of the our condition as a citizens of this world. And it is necessary to think not only in terms of evolutionary and perspective. So building on the past, maybe there are examples in the past that they were certainly more sustainable, more ecological friendly than those that we are using these days. Maybe we can go back to some slow innovation processes that are still successful in some parts of the world, and bring this to some strategic thinking. I mean, thinking the long-term perspective and how we can therefore support sustainable development. What was this? Finally, we reached the grand societal challenges already with few time ahead. And this is somehow partly a common sense that you certainly hear almost every day in the news outlet. Is we are talking about the global warming, land degradation, regional inequalities, these poverty traps or poverty pockets in certain urban regions. And to address them is necessary to engage with a wide ranging of disciplines, of perspectives. They entail social dynamics, economic dynamics, ecological dynamics. So we have to engage also with natural sciences, biology, with biogeography as well. And this also implies, let's bring this to economic geography, that's the role here, changes in technology impacting production and consumption. And then when we come to play a role, if you are not an entrepreneur, we play a role as a consumers. And all of this also requires some flexible forms of governance, sometimes informal, that we have to accept that in some micro level, informal arrangements, sometimes they play a key role in, for instance, shaping these courses. Maybe the meetings, again, in a non-COVID context, meetings within communities that try to favor the transition to a friendly mode of producing energy. Maybe these meetings, these grassroots movements that organize meetings or activities within communities, they will lead to overcome the negativity side of some of these grand societal challenges. So again, planning, spatial planning, regional innovation policies, cultural geography, economic geography, they all play a role. And it is in this context, again, from that paper I just showed you before from Hashem 2020, it tells that economic geography needs to be represented in this attempt to address part of these grand societal challenges. Economic geography is not a magic solution, and there is no one size fitting all. So we have to be very careful in our analysis and look at the specificities of the territory. That's also what evolutionary economic geography tells us. But economic geography does play a role in supporting these grand societal challenges, in supporting policies that can overcome the negative aspects of these grand societal challenges. And if we think this in the context of almost everyday life, we also is important to understand that sometimes what is around us is not necessarily just the result of activity that is taking place or within the same continent or within the same country, but as impacts elsewhere in the world. That's what we call this frontiers if we are talking about development patterns. There are frontier areas where certain activities are taking place, economic activities that impact their local areas, but also elsewhere in the world. And then here this study tells that policy decisions taken in the European Union, and in this case, the inactivity of taking decisions regarding deforestation impact deforestation in South America, in the tropical forest of Africa, for example. So there are decisions within the European Union that they are fostering some societal challenges. They are contributing to deforestation in other territories. Okay, that is sometimes there are decisions taking that influencing, and there are other times where decisions are needed, and these decisions are not being made that can lead to overcome these social challenges. And then you can also go almost to the question of understanding, and it's the role of consumers here, to understanding if our morning coffee actually is impacting deforestation. If and this leads to analyze global supply chains. This also leads to our own decisions in the supermarket and try to understand, and this is still very, very premature, try to understand if our choice of coffee is more, they are not, certainly you will not find any fully sustainable coffee, but if they are at least respecting some international agreements that intend to protect native forests worldwide. So a truly exercise within economic geography really touches upon many other elements from other disciplines, cultural, certainly pure economics or orthodox economics, social behavior, sometimes psychology as well, and land use and planning linked to regional policies. And then I also I'm advocate, and this some of these references, those three I showed you before, they also go in this direction that everyone has a role to play. It's not easy, but we have a role to play. If we want healthy food, we have to rethink supply chains. And again, I'm focusing on economic geography, of course. If we want to enjoy clean water, then we have to accelerate, or at least contribute to accelerate, these energy transition strategies. Maybe we have to look at some specific cases, understanding what works and what doesn't work, trying to build here frameworks that can support, that can accelerate this transition. There is different ways to go, and there is also many years ahead until we can truly polish all of the globalization context in terms of the supply chains to bring them to a more sustainable mode of producing. And we can tell, okay, it's very nice to say it, and clearly I'm trying my best. When I go to supermarket, I look at the labels of the products, I see if they respect fair trade, where they are coming from, if the companies really contribute to deforestation, or if they have some measures to counteract it. Yeah, indeed, it's very nice to do this, but indeed, we as a consumers, we lack this agency, we lack this decision-making capacity to make things happen in an alternative direction. Yet we can still play a role, or by engaging, by trying to solidify these discourses towards this change through social media. There are different platforms, through podcasts, organizing small events within your communities, and maybe if you have the resources and the support, maybe come with some entrepreneurial ideas or some business ideas that can then completely support or provide alternatives to the current economic landscape, or to the production, or to the consumption, or to the distribution of goods in our cities, for example, through electrical vehicles, or through bicycles, for example. So a number of ways that we can play our role here, but this is certainly very easy to tell, and very easy to tell in this context, me sitting here and you sitting in your place, then putting it into practice. Yet there are some good examples around hers. This discussing this grand societal challenge, I found it is very challenging. So then we can tell that it is about land degradation, and there is a lot of phenomena affecting land degradation. Industrial activities, they lead to land degradation, they lead to climate change. So this grand societal challenge, we are talking about social, health conditions, the demographic change, and well-being. They impact food security. They involve sustainable agriculture. Some of you maybe are certainly not interested on this, but they also, others maybe they are. And then in this context, you can rethink the way economy behaves. Maybe you can rethink about bioeconomy, green technologies, circular economy. Also to rethink the way are the infrastructure such as transportation or housing or employment land, as called within spatial planning, are also discussed and treated within the society. But it also implies talking about integration when we talk about grand societal challenge. If we move towards more environmental friendly energy, we have to think about those or lagging behind regions or less favored communities that sometimes cannot afford to pay for alternative energy. So we have also to think about equality in this context, how to support this transition to more environmental friendly and or zero carbon energy production, and then integrate the communities within these processes so we don't aggravate these social challenges. And I'm trying here with this slide is to build a more closer look to this global challenge from economic geography perspective. So if you think about the aging of the population that affects, for example, the Nordic countries and parts of Europe as well, then we have, from economic geography perspective, we have to maybe rethink about the markets, rethink about the products that are placed in the market. And these will also influence the way labor is distributed across sectors and how these activities are organized within the space to respond to some of this challenge. Also, currently, this individualism can also be taken as a social challenge in today's society. So if then from economic geography perspective, we have to rethink the way consumers are making their decisions. Maybe they are being completely individualistic and only use some social media to access information. So then it's necessary to rethink the way some firms do the marketing of their products, or even the characteristics of their products. Now the consumers tend to be more sympathetic towards bio-based products. So the communication here has also to change. This is all material and to be explored within economic geography. And the same goes to knowledge, for example, and understanding this globalization, and understanding to the point that actually that we need to import soybeans from the Cerrado in Brazil, contributing to deforestation there, only to support the consumers' trends within Europe that now prefer plant-based products to in comparison to others. So we have to make necessary balance, and we geographers and economic geographers play a role in this context, as well as a consumer. So this is a number of I'm not giving answers here. I'm just paving the way to some ways of thinking. And when we think about this transition towards bio products in our diet, in our food systems, we have to think all the impacts across the supply chain. All right, and the same goes within more elements that are less within the embedded in the economic organization of the landscape, such as urbanization and the impacts in terms of this as in the mobility and the commuting of the workforce, and also understanding that to support certain transitions towards more energy friendly cities and regions, maybe this requires a large amounts of fund how to sustain also the financial sector in this context. So these courses within social challenges, most of the discourses trying to address these grand challenges are very much related with innovation policy. And within economic geography, the discussions that try to address and position economic geography in a way that can address these grand challenges is very much linked to environmental evolutionary economic geography, a concept that I will not explore here. I explore in my other module. That is a trend or not a paradigm, a way of thinking evolution economic geography from a more environmental perspective. And these researchers, they try to merge both, and in common they first try to understand the structural failures, why certain policies actually they are failing to become more sustainable, and why others are more effective in contributing in paving the way to this to a more respectful attitude towards the environment and the society. And both references here, they pointed out that economic geography needs to play a role, and there is already a number of research within economic geography that explores or the green economy, the clean tech. There is now the European Green Deal, which is also the result of a lot of conversations involving economic geographies. There is this degrowth concept. So a number of new concepts are also coming in: the slow innovation, circular economy. These are all concepts that try to disentangle what I pointed out here, this environmental evolutionary economic geography. So in addressing this negative challenge, evolutionary economic geography plays a role trying to understand the paths, okay, these roadmaps from the past that to the present, that eventually with this strategic thinking to the future. And this reference here again is I'm using it to justify why economic geography should engage with this discussion on the grand challenges and how to embrace a more sustainable approach. And the past framework to put this, there are others that you can think about. One of them is using the Sustainable Development Goals, and they are the result of an evolutionary process, and they mainly exist to support, to overcome part of this grand challenge, such as a climate change that lead to failures in the food system, that impacts biodiversity, and also creates some geopolitical instability across the world. Many of the armed conflicts that we have been witnessing, partly, although the mainstream media does not communicate that in this way, they are partly justified because of the access to natural resources. In most of the cases, still fossil fuels, but in other cases to water supplies, for example. And this reference here tells that the only way to truly move towards this a more sustainable world is by engaging private actors, non-governmental organizations, community organizations, ourselves as citizens, as consumers. That's the only way, is to engage pluralism, embrace a multidisciplinary perspective, and build policies that are embedded within communities, and they respond to the need of the communities, and they also respect or try to respect those that are less favored within these communities, in a way that they can also access the benefits. This is just to illustrate that we reach now this framework of the Sustainable Development Goals as a result of a long efforts involving different multiple countries in the world. And that's still the way to now operationalize the Sustainable Development Goals is still taking shape. In Europe, we have the European Green Deal. The Green Deal is also currently being discussed in North America. In Canada, there's already a number of frameworks, more within the urban regions, such as Vancouver, that try to respond and operationalize this framework of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I will go quickly in the last 10 minutes through the sustainable development, to try to focus on the last slides where I preach the Sustainable Development Goals and the Evolutionary Economic Geography. And we are certainly familiar that when we are talking about sustainable development, is about thinking in supporting the development of future generations. This is the starting point of all of this discourse within sustainable development and the base of the Sustainable Development Goals. And why we came to this? Because they argue that the economy failed. The economy couldn't bring prosperity across the globe. There was clearly very disparate ways of behaving in terms of merging economy and ecology. The environmental aspects were being degraded at a high pace, and this required an intervention. And 87 within the United Nations, they came to this framework, and it is very curious that only recently, through the Sustainable Development Goals, I think it's my opinion, also justified through the literature, that the sustainable development start gaining again a more emphasis within the society, more than in the beginning of more than when it started in 87. So this is about develop the present without compromising the future generations. And again, it involves different aspects: economic, social, and ecological dimensions. And I'm confident that you are certainly aware of it. The publication also tells us. And then here we try to focus more on economic aspects of growth, of equity, of distribution of assets, of efficient economic activities that can contribute to this grow of the economies, but also respect the social and ecological dimensions. And again, here requires all this transdisciplinary work, and economic geography plays a role in discussing sustainable development, in bringing this more humanized understanding to the economic activities and all these references, they point out in one direction, is that nothing can be achieved if we work alone, only across disciplines, only engaging with different sources of knowledge. And it is in this context that I think that we economic geographers, that if we think in evolution, economic geography need to play a role. But it's not an easy process. Okay, we try to think strategically, thinking about the future and how to operationalize these sustainable development goals by looking at the past, by looking at political relationships, by looking at political decisions in the past, by looking at these historical trajectories, and also these cultural ideologies that can help us to have a more balanced relationship between nature and society. And in society, here you put the economic activities. Okay. And we have these sustainable development goals, a lot of details here with hyperlinks that you can check later. And these 17 sustainable development goals that you are certainly more familiar with. Here some highlighted some aspects that relate with economic geography. They call for a more inclusive approach to consumption and production. They call for the need to rethink technological progress that occurs in balance with nature, in balance with ecological values, and also respects human rights. And in economic geography terms, this means respecting labor force. Okay, this is our strong cause to the countries to then operationalize through policies these sustainable development goals. And again, I said that we all play a role in solidifying some of this discourse, this need to move towards a more friendlier ecological, environmental friendlier way of developing our economic landscape. And certainly more related with economic geography, the sustainable development goal number 8, number 9, they are very close to economic geography thinking, but also we cannot forget the relationship that exists across all of these 17 goals and 169 targets. And then what I want to underline here is that the development in one of these goals, okay, can help the progress in another. So we are talking about synergies, but also the progress in one goal can hinder the progress in another. And then we are talking about trade-offs. Just using the last minutes to give you the examples, and then I can come back to this in the beginning of the next lecture. This is the past example in which all of these 17 goals is embedded. If you think about the nexus or the relation, the connection from the Latin to connect, that exists between the food systems, the energy system, and the water. So if you think about these three main domains, all of these sustainable development goals, they are interconnected, and synergies exist. So the development one helps the development of another. There is also some trade-offs. The developing one can also hinder or block the progress in another one. Let's try to be more specific here. So within evolutionary economic geography, and if you think about the sustainable development goals, you have to different ways of thinking. We think about degrowth. You can rethink about the production system. Instead of having this global supply chains, you try to rethink on how to make this more localized, more regionalized productions. So we think about more sustainable ways of organizing the economic landscape. You think about energy policies, how to continue supporting innovation, but in a way that is more green, that is more environmental friendly, and how to distribute this across communities and engaging the poor in this context. So we have to think about the different alternatives, and the targets within these goals can help us to rethink in that way. Bringing here the last two slides between these synergies in progress, the synergies within the Sustainable Development Goals. So if we think about in progress in the goal number 8, this will favor, for example, the achievement of the goal number 13. If we think about if you rethink the consumption within certain products, it can lead to counteract the negative effects of climate change, for example. If you also rethink this regional, the capital accumulation, and towards a less intensive use of or transportation across the supply chains, or less consumption of non-renewable resources, then will contribute to more sustainable societies. If we create new job opportunities in emerging markets, will certainly contribute to the achievement, to the operationalization of the goal number 1, no poverty. The other opposite can also occur, the trade-offs. So if we think about investing more in heavy industry, this will certainly can expose the vulnerable communities to climate-related extreme events. If we don't seek a balance, then we are hindering the progress in other or in another goal or in specific targets. If you're also thinking about in applying these measures that try to counteract or try to support a more bio-based products, this can also reduce employment opportunities. So we are hindering here the progress in the goal number 8. So this is the exercise we could do within the linkage Sustainable Development Goals and Economic Geography. And here as the last slide from this lecture, you have a number of ideas that are just here creating as a hypothesis that can help you to rethink the way economic geography can engage with sustainable development and with operationalization of the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, and then the time is up, and then I will conclude the lecture here. I have time to stay online if you have some questions, but you are free to leave. And at this stage, then I will also conclude the record, but I can stay online if you want to discuss some idea you have, or point out some failure also in terms of the organization of the lecture. And I will recap all of these three slides in the beginning of the next lecture before entering the discussion within industrial dynamics and clusters and the green entrepreneurship, very much connected with what we just discussed about. So thank you, and see you on Thursday.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. And